Thank you, Mr. Speaker, for calling me this evening. It is a pleasure to follow the, what can I say, energetic speech given by the member for Stoke-on-Trent Central. This is, of course, a second reading debate where we should properly be considering the general objectives and principles of the legislation. And I think there is, in fact, some measure of consensus about the fact a bill like this, or very similar to this, is required in order to give practical effect to us leaving the European Union. Even the honourable member for Holborn and St Pancras admitted in his speech on Thursday that something like this was required. Even the Constitutional Committee of the other place accept something like this is required. And it's clearly reasonable when we have to pass 1,000 statutory instruments to effect leaving the European Union that we do something like this bill. And I would remind members opposite that all of those 1,000 statutory instruments are votable, should members opposite wish to do so. So the idea there is no democratic scrutiny, I don't think is accurate. Now, we've heard members opposite on Thursday and today claim that the measures in this bill give unfettered power to the executive. But I think it's very clear, both in Clause 7 and in Clause 9, that these powers are very clearly circumscribed. Clause 7, subclause 1, says that these powers can only be used to correct a failure of the retained EU law or to correct a deficiency in it. And Clause 9, subsection 1, says very clearly these powers can only be used to implement the exit agreement, an agreement on which this House will have a vote. So the idea these powers can be used across the board, I don't think bears scrutiny. And just to make it completely clear, Clause 7, subsection 6 and 9(3) make it completely clear that a whole range of things, for example, introducing new criminal laws, cannot be done under this legislation. So the powers are fairly clearly circumscribed. And to top that, there are sunset clauses, meaning these powers are strictly time-limited, which I think gives further reassurance. If there is one little tweak I might suggest we could consider, it is that I think under 7(4) and 9(2), by regulation, this bill itself can be amended, and one might consider exempting the sunset clauses from that provision. But that is the kind of fine-tuning that can quite properly happen at committee stage rather than at second reading. Now, Mr. Speaker, I've heard quite a lot of really rather extraordinary hyperbole and crocodile tears from some members opposite during this debate. The member for Holborn and St Pancras, who is not in his place, said on Thursday he felt this bill disenfranchises Parliament. But in fact, he has been perfectly content for the last 40 years for regulations and laws passed in Brussels by qualified majority voting, so with no veto or definitive say by the UK government, to be implemented into UK law by orders in Council without so much as a sniff of a vote in this House. So where was his righteous indignation for the whole of the last 40 years? Now, the honourable lady for Hampstead and Kilburn, who I see is in her place, said that this bill would be a Hampstead and Kilburn, I should know, shouldn't I, having stood there in 2010. The honourable lady for Hampstead and Kilburn said that this would be a wholesale threat to rights under EU law. But this bill copies and pastes wholesale those rights into UK law. And any material amendment to those would have to be passed through a vote of this House. And she specifically referenced human rights law. She obviously hasn't read Clause 7, subclause 6, Section E, and 9(3)(d), which then she will know. She says she has. She should know then that this bill expressly prohibits these powers being used to in any way interfere with human rights law. So she will see the face of the bill expressly precludes her concerns. And Mr. Speaker, as for the SNP, they are going into paroxysms of apoplexy at the merest hint that London may exercise even a smidgen of the powers currently exercised in Brussels. I haven't heard a single word of protest in the 2 years I've been here about those self-same powers being exercised in Brussels. Where were their shouts of indignation then? So, Mr. Speaker, I think this bill is necessary. Everybody seems to agree that is the case. No doubt there are points of detail that can and will be improved upon, but I think anyone who is serious about implementing the British public's decision should vote for this second reading this evening.